Chapter 11. The Invention, Convention, Detention, Suspension. George and Harold screamed and ran out the gym door, closing it tightly behind them. "Aha!" yelled Mr. Krupp, who was just coming down the hall. "You boys left the detention room. You know what that means, don't you?" "It wasn't our fault," cried Harold. "Too bad," Mr. Krupp shouted with delight. "You boys are officially suspended." "Wait," cried George. "You've got to listen. Behind this door is an army of evil, vicious talk." "I don't have to listen to you boys ever again," laughed Mr. Krupp. "Now get your stuff and get out of this school." But, Harold stammered. "You don't understand. Get out!" Mr. Krupp screamed. George and Harold groaned and walked to their lockers to collect their stuff. "Gosh," said Harold, "in one day we've gotten a detention, a suspension, and we've created an army of evil talking toilets who want to take over the world." "That's a pretty bad day, even by our standards," said George. "Oh well," said Harold. "I just hope things don't get any worse." Chapter 12. Things Get Worse. Word spread quickly throughout the office that George and Harold had been suspended. The teachers rushed out to cheer and laugh at the two boys. "You're in big trouble now," chuckled Miss Anthrope. "I can't wait to call your parents and tell them the news." "Let's take their desks outside and chop them up," cried Miss Ribble. "Let's throw a party in the gym," shouted Mr. Meaner. "No!" cried George. "Whatever you do, don't open the door to the gym." "We can do whatever we like," snarled Mr. Meaner as he dashed over to the gymnasium door. "Look, I'm opening the door." He quickly opened the gym door. "Now I'm closing the door," he said. "Now I'm opening the door again, and now I'm... Glah!" An evil toilet had stuck its mouth through the door, snapped Mr. Meaner up, and swallowed him whole. Flush! The talking toilets then pushed their way through the open gymnasium doors and spilled out into the hallway. "Yum, yum, eat 'em up," the toilets bellowed. "Yum, yum, eat 'em up." The teachers couldn't believe their eyes. They screamed and ran for their lives. Only Mr. Krupp, Miss Ribble, and George and Harold remained. Frozen in fear. They watched, paralyzed. As the talking toilets came nearer and nearer. Finally, Miss Ribble pointed at the toilets and snapped her fingers. Snap! "Go away," she cried. "Go away this minute." But the toilets didn't listen. They moved closer and closer. Finally, Miss Ribble turned and ran. Mr. Krupp, however, just stood there in a daze. George and Harold looked up at him. "Uh-oh," said Harold. "Did she just snap her fingers?" "Yep," said George. "Now we're really in trouble." And George was right, for at that moment, Mr. Krupp had begun to change. A silly, heroic smile came over his face as he stood defiantly before his foes. "I'll put a stop to you, vile villains," he said fearlessly. "But first, I need some supplies." Mr. Krupp turned and dashed to his office. George and Harold ran after him. "Why did Miss Ribble have to snap her fingers?" cried Harold. "Why?" "Never mind that," said George. "Mr. Krupp is turning into Captain Underpants. We've got to pour water over his head before it's too late." Chapter 13. It's Too Late. When George and Harold reached Mr. Krupp's office, they found only his clothes, shoes, and toupee on the floor. "Look," said Harold, "the window is open, and one of the red curtains is missing." "What do we do now?" asked George. "Do we save Captain Underpants, or do we stay here and get eaten by a bunch of toilets?" "Let me think about that one," said Harold as he climbed out the window. George quickly collected Mr. Krupp's things and shoved them into his backpack. Then he jumped out the window after Harold. The two boys slid down the flagpole and ran off after Captain Underpants. "Where does he think he's going?" asked George. "I have no idea," said Harold, "but we'd better run fast because I think we're being followed." Captain Underpants dashed through the backyards of some nearby houses and collected pairs of underwear from the clotheslines. "Mommy," said a little boy looking outside his window, "a man in a red cape just stole our underwear." And now two boys are being chased by a ferocious-looking toilet with sharp, pointy teeth, screaming, "Yum, yum, eat 'em up." "Yeah, right," laughed his mother. "Just how gullible do you think I am?"